We're like, we get it. Because that's the only song I really know associated with Manchester, England, other than the ultra-depressing Love Will Tear Us Apart. And that's the other thing I know about town, is the Factory and Tony Wilson and shit, so this is neat for me. I like being here. So hello, everybody. What'd you think of the movie? I don't know what the fuck I think of the movie. But then they think for a second and go, I love it. It's a delightful fucking flick for me to make and shit, because it really just fucks with the audience constantly. It's like an irritating dude in the movie theater who like constantly leans over and is like, isn't this fucking cool? It just bugs you. And trust me, you didn't want me here tonight. I came right at the end and shit and was sitting in the hallway. When I sit and watch the movie, I'm usually in the back, and you hear me loudest throughout the screening just going, oh, brilliant, genius, Kev, shit like that. So I'm a big fan of the movie, man. I love it because it is kind of, it fucks with the audience in a cool way. You know, generally you go to the movie theater and you're just kind of like always ahead of the movie. And when I was writing this picture, I told myself, as soon as you're ahead of the movie, the audience is going to be ahead of the movie as well. So just jump, change it. No matter what you're doing, no matter what path you're on with the story, just jump over here and shift completely, do something completely different. And so that's how I kind of is able to stay ahead of everybody and surprise and shock a little bit, because that's tough to do, man. Like, comedy I can do, I know how to make people laugh and shit, but when I said I wanted to do a horror movie, I was kind of really biting off more than I could chew. I can't do horror. Like, I look at Dario Argento's stuff or John Carpenter, I'm like, oh, that's horror, I can't fucking do that. But I knew I could do unsettling, you know? I knew I could creep people out, because chicks been telling me for years, you're creepy, you know? And I was like, if I could just put that to work in a movie, it might kind of pan out and shit. So I went for this, and as I was writing it, I was like, I just want to make sure that nobody leaves going, meh, you know? It's like, if they leave going, I fucking hate it, or if they leave going, I fucking love it, that's fine. But if they leave going like, I've seen something just like it, then I fucking failed. That's the one thing I'm happy about. Like, you can see this and say anything you want, but you'll never be like, oh, I saw a movie just like it yesterday. You know, it was very fucking off the beaten path, and that to me was kind of important. It was also important just to kind of keep you off your seats just a little bit the whole way through, so that I could rope-a-dope you through the movie. Just little weird ticks like jump cuts and shit like that. Dopey things like there's no score in the movie. I don't know if you noticed that. We just take the score out completely, so you're always sitting there trying to decide how you feel about a moment or a character without being kind of communicated to by the filmmaker or having it telegraphed by the filmmaker. That's what we do. The score is a real big a big trick in the bag of tricks that filmmakers use, because generally it totally fucking sets you up and tells you how you should be feeling at any given moment. You sit down and watch a movie, the score is very easygoing, and it's letting you get to your seat as the movie kind of starting up and whatnot, and it lulls you. It's like, this is the opening score, sit down, eat your popcorn, hey, it's Brad Pitt again. And then fucking you're like, okay, everything's cool. But then when plot kicks in, that's when they get loud and shit. Dun dun, you know, everything starts changing. The music's like, Brad, dun dun. There's a dude behind the door with a fucking knife, you know. And you get all tense and shit, even though nothing's really technically happened yet. Because that's what we do, we're manipulative. And I wanted to leave that off. I put in a little score when I first cut one of the scenes, and it just felt like bullshit. I was like, imagine if we just take the score out, and then people have to decide how they feel about the characters and whatnot. You know, most of the time it's easy to feel pretty shitty and horrible about Abe and Cooper and his family. Like, oh, I fucking hate him and stuff. And everything they say is just wrong and bad. But even that is a fucking trick, because at one moment I spin it, and I make you agree with the Coopers, even though everyone in this room will be like, oh, I can't stand those people and everything they stand for. But there's one moment when he's up there doing his sermon, and he's talking about pederasts, and he's like, Thailand, where pederasts travel thousands of miles, spend untold amounts of money to sodomize a child. And you can hear a fucking pin drop when it happens, and that's because everyone in the audience who's just hating this motherfucker for like the last 5 minutes goes, well, he's right about that. And that's uncomfortable, because nobody wants to identify with that fucking guy. You want to be able to push him out of your fucking periphery altogether. So little things like that, dopey, weird, big things. Like at one point on the screen it says 4:47 a.m. meant nothing whatsoever. Think about it, you know, it's just like you thought when it happened, you're like, that useful information will come in handy later on, I'm sure, because look how big it is on the screen. It's just a fucking rope-a-dope trick. It's like, look over here, shiny lights, that we could come over here with something fucking new. And it keeps paying dividends throughout the rest of the movie. You'll be sitting there, and as people start fucking dying, you're like, wait a second, what time is it, you know? As if it fucking matters. And then there are weird big tricks like, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Pollak, and everyone's like, oh, is Kevin Pollak the littlest suspect? You know? We love him, and look, he's funny, he's making jokes, he's going hanging out with John Goodman. I know what the movie is now. These two are gonna bring down these fucking religious nut bars, and what the fuck happened to Pollak? You know? So it's designed to just fuck with you, and I don't know, as a filmmaker, I enjoy it so much, because it's not so much a film, like 3-act structure and shit like that. That's why I think the movie is kind of critic-proof, because it's not really a movie. It's a parlor trick. It's a magic trick, right? It's just a real weird, shifting magic trick with very cool performances in it. And that's why I get away with it, because Jesus Christ, those fucking performances are amazing. You know, Michael Parks crushes as Avon Cooper. You believe that dude fucking exists. John Goodman crushes. Melissa Leo, the kids fucking crush. The little kids crush. There's a girl in the movie named Ivy Klein. It's Dave Klein, my DP's daughter. She's about this big, like she's in the chapel at one point, she's climbing over a pew, she's like, I'm good at climbing, I'm good at climbing. Just adorable as all fucking hell. Probably the best actress in the fucking movie, hands down. Because she's the little chick who fucking screams, you know, in that scene when Carrie Bechet is just like, they're men outside and aiming to kills, and she's like, ah, she starts screaming. Wonderful fucking actress. We had no idea what we had in her. We started shooting with her first day, because like I said, it's Dave Klein, my DP, the guy that shoots the movie, it's his kid. And so generally speaking, when you make these movies, you leave your family for a long period of time, a month, 2 months, and even when you're with them, you're not with them because you're in the movie. So we find it's always best to kind of involve the families, our wives, our kids in the movie. I was taught that lesson early on by my own wife on Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. You know, she was like, I'd written the script. That was the first script I'd written, and that she was with me when I'd written it. Dogma I'd written before I met her and stuff, and we kind of hooked up while we were making Dogma. So Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is the first thing she got to read as a finished script. And I was like, what'd you think? She was like, this is a teenage boys movie, you know? And I was like, thanks. And then she's like, well, can I be in it? And I was like, oh, you want to be in a teenage boys movie now, you know? And she was like, yeah, I'd like to be in it. I was like, well, you're not really an actress. And she's like, well, Jason Mewes wasn't really an actor until you put him in movies, and I'm not even sure he still is an actor yet. And I was like, yeah, but I don't know, it's different. And she goes, well, you put all your friends in your movies. Why won't you put your best friend in the movie? And I said, I did. Scott Mosier's in the movie. And she's like, let's put it this way. You ever want to get blown again, put me in a movie. I'm like, okay. And so, you know, she started being in the flicks. It's great. You get to hang out with her and whatnot, and she'll see what you're up to. Because if you're out of sight, out of mind, everyone assumes you're having a party and shit, but making movies, no parties. Usually a lot of work and whatnot, and having people there to see it is always a great alibi rather than coming home and they assume that you just had a great time. Like, no, we were all working. And now she's part of the work. I said to Dave Klein, bring your wife in, dude. Put Marnie in the church. His wife is one of the believers in the church as well. And I said, bring Ivy, because she's fucking adorable, man. It'd be awesome to have a cute little kid in the midst of this family and shit. She can watch you guys work and she'll have a good time. And she seemed to understand movies, like Make Pretend and shit like that, because she would come up to me all the time, run up like little kids and be like, I'm wearing my costume, and then run away and shit, you know. And I was like, smart kid. But oddly enough, Jason Mewes used to do the same thing. I'm wearing my costume, and run away. So, you know, she's a wonderful little kid, but sprightly and shit like that. And we put her in the chapel scene, and even before that, we took her to the protest. Like, you know, at the beginning of the movie, there's the protest. They're holding up signs at the funeral for the dead kid at the beginning of the flick, and the entire Cooper clan's there, including Ivy. And so, you know, generally when you do a big, wide crowd shot like that, you know, you don't have them necessarily doing dialogue. They're just yelling out shit. Since it was a protest, they're yelling out, burn in hell, Jacob Harlow burns in hell, you're going to hell, shit like that. And generally speaking, when you do crowd shots as well, people don't have to really say much of anything. They sometimes go peas and carrots, because you're just moving, watching mouths move, and they put in sound later on sometimes. So generally, we're shooting this sequence, letting everybody say whatever they want, as long as it's within keeping of the movie and whatnot. So I'm like, talk about Jacob Harlow, talk about hell. This is what all these sign-holding people ever do. They just yell shit about God and Jesus and hate and hell. And so they're like, okay, and everybody's doing it and whatnot. And I'm watching that. We got 2 cameras, one wide picking up everything. One little camera that's kind of going in, picking up tights of the crowd, and, you know, going inside, picking up 2 shot here, single here. Dave, since Dave is Ivy's dad, Ivy always eventually winds up with a beautiful fucking close-up on one of the little cameras and shit. You know, it stands to reason and shit. So I'm watching 2 different coverages on 2 different monitors. I look at this one that finally hits on Ivy, and I watch Ivy blow up, like animation style, like she's incredibly animated, and she's sitting there going, and looking like she's yelling, but I can't hear what she's saying and shit. So, you know, we want one more take, and I told the sound guys, I was like, throw a mic on Ivy, because she's yelling something, man. I want to know what a 3-year-old would ad-lib or something like that. That's going to be amazing. It might be as good as Affleck's ad-libs. So they put a mic on her and shit, and we rolled again, and we got the wide, and then we picked off the kind of tight inside of the wide, and we eventually fall on Ivy. And when we fall on Ivy, I hit the sound guy, I'm like, turn up her mic, turn up her mic. Turns up her mic, and I hear what the kid's yelling. She's screaming at the top of her lungs, swim down, swim down. And I start fucking cracking up, man, because that's hysterical. And so we cut, and I'm laughing, and Dave's like, what's funny? I was like, Dave, your kid, man, your kid was ad-libbing in the scene. He's like, what'd she say? I said, she says swim down. And he's like, what the fuck does that mean? I'm like, what do you mean, dude? It's from Finding Nemo. He's like, yeah? I was like, yeah, like they're all the fish are in the net, and they're like, swim down, and they're trying to get out. And I think your kid, she's 3, man, she sees all these people bunched together, yelling and shit, and in her 3-year-old mind, she just went to Finding Nemo, and she's like, all right, swim down, swim down. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, she ruined the take. I was like, dude, that don't ruin it. That's like the awesome thing for a little Christian kid to yell. You're gonna swim down to hell, swim down. You know? I was like, it's perfect, leave her alone. So in the chapel, we'd cut to her all the time. And then when we did that sequence where Carrie Bechet kills Melissa Leo, you know, she turns around, she sees her sisters. You don't know they're there and shit, and she freaks out. And then she collects herself. She tells them, like, they've been outside, they ain't been close. And we've been shooting this movie, like, you know, for weeks with the kid, with Ivy around set. She seemed to obviously know that we were making a movie. This is my costume, across the boards, until this day. Like, we shot the stuff with Melissa, where Melissa gets shot by Carrie. That was done. All we had, except for the scene, was Carrie sitting down on the ground. Over here, off camera, is Dave's wife, Marnie, giving an eye line to Ivy so that Ivy doesn't look down the camera and stuff like that. And then her sisters, her fake sisters, holding her and stuff, and the crew. So we go to shoot that sequence, and we didn't really rehearse it with the kid because we're like, well, you know, what's the point, man? Because she's playing, she's running around and shit. We know what the blocking is. We rehearsed it with the older girls, you know, who weren't Ivy, the other 2 sisters, Carrie and the other 2 sisters. And so now we're going to go for the scene with Ivy herself. So Dave is shooting again, and he's not only the DP, but he's the cameraman. He's operating. He's got the camera on his fucking shoulder. And there's, Marnie, which is Ivy's mom, off to the side, waving at her daughter and stuff. And we go action.